buyers are more educated. So they come in with biases into the sales process, with biases, with preconceived notions. So to go in and just ask sort of, questions in a general way doesn't necessarily work like it did in the past.
Hi, I'm Trish Tagley, and this is Optimal Instinct, the podcast. I'm a business consultant that works with organizations that sell services. Organizations that want to get clients to stay longer, be more open to upsell, and refer often. Why am I different? Unlike other consultants, I get you to your action plan in a day. What's your time worth? Today, we have with us Nick Kane, who is managing partner with Janek Performance Group. Nick has trained thousands of sales professionals worldwide. His passion is helping sales professionals elevate their skills and careers and in turn their lives. He is a co-author with the book Critical Selling and a regular contributor for Training Industry and Selling Power. He is from Los Angeles originally, but has been living and working in Las Vegas, Nevada for nearly 2 decades. Not many people know, but Nick, early in his career, worked and trained salespeople in Egypt and the Philippines. We might start actually with that. How did it become Egypt and the Philippines?
Yeah. Well, good to be here with you, Trish. I'm excited to join the podcast today. Yeah. So that was earlier in my career. I worked for a technology telecom company, and the organization was looking to expand globally, primarily its sales operations. Mm-hmm. So had an opportunity to open call centers abroad. So I managed a team of individuals that were based here in the States, and we opened call centers in Cairo. Mm-hmm. And in the Philippines, right? So I lived in Cairo for just under 2 years. Wonderful experience, amazing people, made some lifelong friends there. Just a great experience. And then also in the Philippines as well for about 6 months. But certainly helped learn and grow my sales chops there. Yeah. This was a B2B outbound telesales call center play, utilizing call center agents in those countries to call back to the States and other English-speaking countries. Yes. To offer products. So it was an interesting experience.
Mm-hmm. I was born here, and when I was 2, we moved to the Philippines.
Okay.
So that's why I asked you about that, because obviously I know it well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having grown up there. All right, so let's get to the podcast. So tell me, what is the problem that you solve?
Well, as an organization, we help companies improve sales performance within their organizations, right? So this could be companies as small as a startup or an SMB client, all the way up to the Fortune 100. But there are certain inner workings within a sales organization that we understand, what makes top performers tick, what makes top performing organizations tick. And it's really through those services that we offer, sales training, sales consulting, and talent management, that we're able to partner with organizations to improve sales performance.
Mm-hmm. And what are the common mistakes that people make when trying to solve?
Well, I think generally speaking, common mistakes they range based on what is going on within the organization. I think one of the things I wanted to focus on in our discussion today is really around the idea of how to negotiate. Mm-hmm. And how to drive towards win-win outcomes. That tends to be a challenge in today's environment, especially with the lack of ability to see a person in person, right? You're trying to engage in these Zoom calls and in these WebEx calls and Microsoft Teams. A lot of negotiation is interpersonal, right? Mm-hmm. And you need to have those skills to be able to effectively negotiate towards win-win outcomes. So, looking at things through that lens, I would say a common mistake that salespeople make when it comes to negotiation is not being as prepared going into those meetings as possible. Mm-hmm. There's a couple things that drive towards a successful negotiation outcome. One is how prepared you are to understand the customer's needs and their pains and challenges and what they're trying to drive towards. It's understanding the person that you're interacting with, what is their negotiation style, what are their desired outcomes, et cetera. So I think the more prepared you could be going into those negotiations, the better. I think the biggest misstep that salespeople make is they try to just go in and on their own laurels or in the moment try to figure out what they need to say or what they need to do to drive towards that. And that typically doesn't work very well.
Yeah, winging it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
Especially with all the information that's out there now. It's really hard to just wing it. You need to know your stuff. I did read a bit of the PDF that you're going to be providing to our audience. There's a line in there that struck me that sales professionals should put customers' needs before their own and should be determined to solve customers' problems. Okay, so can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I think you can make the argument both ways there. But to us, what our research tells us is this idea of being highly consultative and driving towards solving the customer's problems or challenges still tends to be at the top of most customers' priority list when it comes to expectations they have of their salespeople. Mm-hmm. The challenge that we're up against now is that access of information, as you were kind of referring to earlier, mm-hmm. Trish. Buyers are more educated. So they come in with biases into the sales process, with biases, with preconceived notions. So to go in and just ask sort of, questions in a general way doesn't necessarily work like it did in the past. The questions you have to ask need to be more thought-provoking. You need to be willing to go deeper than just the surface to really understand needs and understand what's driving those needs and what the pains are and what the impact of solving those problems are. And then be able to offer insights and ideas that help solve problems. So when we say that in our book and in our training curriculum, what we're really saying there is that hasn't changed. In other words, being consultative and solving problems hasn't changed, but the way you go about it, I think, is different than it's been in the past.
Okay, because when I read that, my understanding of, when people say that put customers' needs before their own is basically saying, yes, I can do this, and then going back and going, oh my God, how am I going to fulfill this?
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, that's not how we look at it. In fact, even in our training curriculum, those questions come up, right, in our workshops. Well, what if a client asks me for something and I'm not really sure if I can do it or not? Mm-hmm. How do you respond, right? Do you just say yes and figure it out? And we feel the very opposite of that. I think it's better to be direct and open and honest with a client. You want to be flexible and you want to do everything you can to meet the client's request within reason, right? But I think it's perfectly fine as a sales professional to answer that with, I'm not sure. Let me check on that. Let me do some research. Let me find out. We will do everything we can to make it happen within reason, but I need to double check on that and I can circle back with you. I think the key there is the follow-up.
Yes.
I think most sales professionals, it's common as a mistake that sales professionals will say they will follow up and then they never do. Right. And that loses credibility, that loses confidence in the customer's mind, and typically, drives them towards going with a competitor.
Yeah, there was, when I was still working in corporate in the very beginning of my digital tech career, I had a supervisor and he said to me, the answer is never no. It's yes and then, let me get back to you and then do the research on what they're asking for and then, present them with the fee and the timing. So it's never no, it's yes, but let me figure it out.
Sure. And couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Totally agree.
Okay, so I did mention the free resource, and it's part of your book, Critical Selling. And we will be posting janek.com/critical-selling-the-book for our audience to download. And what is another tip that you could offer our audience about sales?
Yeah, I mean, I think this idea of insights and ideas is certainly very relevant and important in today's environment. I think continuing to understand value that you can provide to clients, I think is key. I'll give one more tip that I think is really important to consider right now in today's environment. I think for organizations that are not taking time to assess their value proposition, right, in today's marketplace, that's a mistake. Right? Like, I think it's really important that you understand the changing needs of your buyers, especially in this fluid, crazy market that we're in today. And you can't assume that the value proposition and the reasons why buyers buy from you today are the same as they were 3 months ago or 6 months ago. I think you have to keep your eyes and ears open to understand what your customers' needs are, what they currently value, and to continue to be open to assessing that on a consistent basis. And if that means offering new tools from a marketing perspective to your sales professionals, if that means allowing salespeople to be a little more flexible and creative in their solution, consideration, then I think those are things that organizations really have to consider. If you just go to the market the same way as you always have and not consider these changes, you're not going to be as successful in today's market.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
So lastly, what is a question that I should have asked you that I did not?
Yeah, I think perhaps a question around what is a skill or what is what is a competency that is remaining consistent in today's environment, right? So, we talked about some of those changes, right? Like you have to be willing to look at the value proposition and modify and change those on the fly if needed and be more creative and those sort of things. But I think one skill that I've seen that remains consistent is the skill of empathy. Right? And really being considerate of the customer situation and what they're experiencing, if they're having to work from home, if they are able to go into the office, if they're on, some sort of limited furlough, just really taking the time to be empathetic towards the customer, both individually and as an organization. I think that empathy in today's environment goes a long way. I think the customers really appreciate your desire to want to understand how they're feeling and where they're coming from, and then also be able to help solve problems, right? And I think a lot of that, it comes down to strong listening skills, being an active listener, but also showing the customer that you're empathetic towards their situation.
Yeah, I just add to that, I definitely agree with you about listening and understanding where the client's from and anticipating their needs, making sure that you're on top of that, and before they can ask the question, you've already answered it. Because you know them that well. So, exactly. Okay, we've come to the end of the podcast. Thank you so much, Nick, for being on the show. It was great having you. Thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Thank you again for the time as well, and best of luck.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you very much for joining us on Optimal Instinct with Trish. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, head on over to iTunes, subscribe, and if you really enjoy the content, leave us a well-appreciated review. If you are looking to create an environment that partners your desire for more profitable, more productive, and greater referability in client relationships, combined with sustained team morale, then I suggest you head over to clientvaluedemo.com to learn more about the C's value model. Talk soon.